From Nutrien Ag Solutions, I'm Senior Meteorologist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story for Monday, November 20th, 2023. I almost wanted to say the 13th there. I'm living in the past. Let's go ahead and take a look at the satellite picture here as the sun comes up on Monday morning. We continue to see this pattern that kind of features higher pressure across the Pacific Northwest, portions of Western Canada, flanked by an area of low pressure across the Pacific, and then an area of low pressure here across the central United States. So the jet stream comes around the base of that trough, up over the top of the ridge, and then down around the base of this trough right here across the central U.S. So we continue to see phases or periods of northwest flow with little weak systems ejecting across the prairie, bringing pretty inconsequential precipitation to the region. And that's exactly what we see today. We've got some very light showers, maybe a couple flurries moving through the Saskatoon area. This little low will continue to move off to the east as we head through the rest of the day today. We'll see additional chances for maybe some light flurries in the mid and later part of the week as well, but nothing as far as measurable, robust precipitation goes or impactful storm systems as we head through the next 7 days. Temperatures generally on the mild side across the prairie. We do have some colder air working its way in. The models have kind of pulled back on the intensity of that cold and the duration of it as far as, what we talked about a week ago today. And then as we look at the last 7 days of precipitation, as expected, pretty dry across the prairie, a little strip of some measurable precipitation across the southern tier of the prairie provinces. But again, this pattern just not really supportive of heavy precipitation across the prairie, and that won't change over the next 7 days. This is the ensemble forecast precipitation over the next 7 days. Again, a pretty big dry void where we're going to have the chance for some flurries, but as we look at North America, we certainly are not the hot spot for precipitation across the Canadian prairie. We continue to see that set up across coastal portions of British Columbia. Again, that strong flow coming around the base of that low over the Pacific, and then that area of low pressure here across the central U.S. that's going to continue to feed some heavier precip over the next 7 days from the southern U.S., eventually up the eastern coast as we head through the rest of the week. We'll see the chance for some snow to stack up across portions of the Rockies. Again, as systems kind of ride down and take this northwest to southeast trajectory, we will at times see the flow be supportive of some snow in the higher elevations all the way from the British Columbia, Alberta border down into the interior Rockies. Nothing really, though, as far as significant snowfall or significant precipitation in general coming in across the prairie proper. Now, again, this really illustrates the problem, if you want to look at it that way, as we're talking about a lack of heavier precipitation over the next 7 days. As we look at this ridge set up across British Columbia, again, kind of just anchored right here, we see the flow come over the top of that ridge. This is not a pattern that's going to bring us substantial precipitation across the prairie. We would want to see an area of low pressure right here, kind of flipping that script, getting that stronger flow to blast into the prairie. That would bring us an active storm track and one that supports more in the way of substantial precipitation. Just not going to happen over the next 7 days, and not a real strong indication it'll happen in the next 7 to 14 either. So here is verbatim the European precipitation forecast. We'll kind of time this one out. We'll look at what we have coming up over the next 7 to 10 days. Bring this one on back here to Monday morning. Again, some very light precipitation as we get the week started across central and eastern portions of the prairie provinces. Not much in the way of accumulating snow with this one. Maybe enough to coat the ground in areas, maybe in the Saskatoon area north from there, north of Highway 16. As we head through Tuesday, dry across the prairie. Wednesday, we see a subtle little front, perhaps bring some light flurries into the region. I think we'll maybe just see a few snowflakes flying through the air. I do not think this will even be enough to bring a coating in most areas, and these flurries taper off as we get into Wednesday night. Higher pressure across the area as we go into Thursday and Friday. That's going to keep us dry as we go into the weekend. We'll see that high pressure, and again, I mentioned that flow coming into the Rockies favorably to bring some snow to higher elevations. We see that kind of sinking south from the northern Rockies into the central Rockies as we head through that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday time frame. Meanwhile, again, quiet across the prairie. This is Friday night. Getting into Saturday, this would be Sunday, maybe a chance for some flurries, kind of rotating around an area of low pressure across the Hudson Bay, just kind of riding over that ridge, diving into the prairie. Now, as we get into early next week, there's some indication we could see a couple systems make their way through the prairie, but does that not feel familiar? Talking about the chance for some snow in the 7 to 10 day time frame. But again, this is not because of a shift in the pattern. This is just maybe, getting a couple favorable systems or two or three to kind of track through and maybe bring a couple of light doses of snowfall. This is not, sounding the alarm for a pattern shift, just maybe the chance for some snow, not until we get to next week. We look at the, week 1, week 2, side by side. This is the European ensemble model. So this would be week 1. This would be week 2 over on the right. This week 2 forecast takes us all the way to December 5th. You see very little change in the overall pattern. Where are we active? It's here across coastal areas of British Columbia, even in the Gulf of Alaska there. And then it's here across the eastern, the southern, and eastern United States with generally dry conditions as we talk about the Canadian Prairie into the northern plains of the United States. Again, not completely dry. We certainly could see a couple systems bring some lighter doses of precipitation, but we are not, in a favorable regime for significant precipitation, and we won't be likely until we get into later parts of December, perhaps, deeper into the winter. But looking at the next 2 weeks, this is what we've got. We'll talk about the chance for some flurries. Again, you see it slink through right there. Just a very light dose here, perhaps Tuesday night into Wednesday. Very, very light snowfall event, but it is what we have to talk about here. I think maybe most folks just going to see some snowflakes flying through the air either Tuesday, Wednesday into maybe Thursday morning. Not much, if anything, in the way of accumulation. Again, those temperatures a little bit on the mild side to get the week started. We will see some colder shots of air make their way in, but generally, as we look at the next 7 to 10 days, this pattern, again, no real strong link to the Arctic. This is very El Nino-esque, the pattern across North America, not completely textbook El Nino, but this kind of lack of really more significant cold air is more supportive of an El Nino background state. And again, it's just these areas of high pressure bringing in dry air that is relatively mild compared to average for late November heading into early December. So shots of cold air for sure, but kind of pulling back on the intensity and the duration of those shots of colder air. You'll see the next 10 days here as we look in Calgary, still seeing those high temperatures above freezing. Last week we were talking about maybe getting those high temperatures a few degrees below freezing. Not the case anymore. Very similar look here in Edmonton. Again, you see those shots of colder air, but not a long-lasting shot of deep cold air by any stretch of the imagination. Saskatoon, a very similar look. Regina here is your next 10 days, and then Winnipeg, maybe the coldest of the 5 here. Those high temperatures on the sub-freezing side as we get into Thursday, Friday, and beyond, heading into the last week of November. So another relatively dry week and a relatively easy to tolerate week as far as temperatures go on the Canadian Prairie. We will talk to you again a week from today. That would be Monday, November 27th, 2023.